is the microphone that you're using good enough, but you're not utilizing it properly? Or do you really need that upgrade to make your content that much better? Welcome back to the Rebel Tech channel. I'm Justin, and in this video we are going to be talking about the AT2020, AT4040. Is the 4040 worth the extra cash to upgrade? And really find out if all those specs that they push on these microphones are really that big of a difference. Before we get started, if you have any questions, comments, or anything whatsoever, please leave it down in the comment section down below. And if you found this video helpful, enjoyable, entertaining, please leave a like as well and consider subscribing. Let's start off on the builds of these two microphones. Both of them are standard Audio Technica jet black and look really cool, really sleek, very minimal, nothing too crazy, which for me, I really like the simple look. It goes a long way. Audio Technica really does a good job at not trying to do too much. They always make a quality item. The 2020 is a little less sleek as the 4040. The 4040 has a more tucked in kind of look and has that nice logo on the front, but not to take away from the 2020. The 2020 still holds its own in its stance. It's more of a do business kind of look than the 4040. The 4040 can do business, but this one right here is more rugged than the 4040. 4040 kind of can be a little hoity-toity at times. That being said, the 4040 is definitely a more attractive microphone. The next thing is they both have an external XLR port that just is nice and sturdy for your XLR cable to be held in properly. It's a standard for Audio Technica microphones, so I really appreciate that they stick with it throughout their lines. The major difference you're going to notice is on the back of the 4040, it has a negative 10 dB pad and a low frequency cutoff that can switch on and off at any time. It's pretty simple. The 2020 is bare bones standard condenser microphone, so for me it's not that big of a deal because chances are I'm probably not going to be using it unless there are some egregious conditions that I'm going to be using it in, which is probably few and far between because I'm probably going to be using it in a controlled environment. But they are there if I need them. But I'm a firm believer in trying to get the most raw sound first and then worry about the editing later. The last thing I want to get into on the bodies are the weight and the dimensions of the microphones. So the AT2020 is coming in at 12.1 ounces, which is also equivalent to 345 grams, while the 4040 is 360 grams or 12.7 ounces. The 4040 is a little bit heavier, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. They're pretty light microphones, and you can put them on just about anything with a shock mount and not have a problem. Next, the dimensions of both these microphones are the 2020 comes in at 6.38 or 162 millimeters long and 2.05 inches or 52 millimeters maximum diameter, body diameter. Over on the 4040 are 170 millimeters or 6.69 inches long and 53.4 millimeters or 2.1 inches long in the maximum body diameter. Pretty much the same thing, nothing too crazy on the dimensions, and like I said, they're not that heavy, they're not that big, so they could be put on just about any stand or any boom arm that you have. Now let's get into some features of these microphones. You're seeing the 4040 right now before we were working on the 2020. So like I said in the builds, those switches on the back of the 4040, to be honest, they're not that big of a deal. They are nice to have, but as far as comparing these two microphones together, I don't consider it a big deal because there are so many peripherals we have nowadays, with DAWs being very accessible to a lot of people, most of them being very affordable or even free. And you're able to do those things in post, and chances are you're probably going to want your raw audio there recorded. There's only certain scenarios where you would actually use those switches. So I'm not going to hold that against the 2020. Just saying it's nice to have. It's a little slight edge to the 4040, but not crazy. As far as other features on these microphones, I could go through the spec sheet like crazy, but I'm not going to bore you with all these things. I'm going to just point out some of the major differences between the two. Both of these microphones, the 2020 and the 4040, are both cardioid polar pattern microphones. So basically they cover all the sounds in front of it and reject the sides and the back. But if you look a little bit closer, there's a little bit of a bubble on the back of the 4040's polar pattern, which would almost consider it like a hypercardioid, so it's maybe focused in a little bit more. At $200 more, it better have a more fine-tuned polar pattern. The next thing I noticed was the noise level, and the 2020 has a noise level of 20 dB, while the 4040 has a 12 dB noise level. So what you're going to notice here is basically there's less hissing, the circuitry doesn't make as much noise. The noise in a microphone is usually considered an electrical thing, meaning that the current that's coming in from the phantom power is creating some type of hum or a buzz, and lower quality or lower budget microphones have a higher they're more susceptible to noise. So at $200 more, again, you should expect that to be lower on the 4040. And lastly, going off the last one, we have the dynamic range. And the 2020 dynamic range is 124 decibels, while the 4040 is at 133 decibels. Again, it's not that big of a difference, but for being $200 more, it better have that extra bit more. So there are plenty other specs that you could go into. I talked about them in the videos that I made on each of these microphones. I did make a 2020 and a 4040 video, so you can go check those out as well. I'll leave links to them at the back end, and I'll leave them down in the description. I'll also leave links to the spec sheets for each of these down in the description, so you guys can go check those out and see if there's any other things that I might not have gone over, and you could actually really look into that frequency response and those polar patterns and all types of stuff that's in those spec sheets. You should really look into these things before you get these microphones, because it's really something to learn from. Now let's get down to what really matters, and we have both the microphones here, the 2020 and the 4040. The real thing that matters is how do they sound, and to the ears of you and me, I mean, my ears are different than yours, and everyone has a different listening of noises, and some people like certain things more than others. So you need to make that decision for yourself. I can only give you my opinion. So first off, to keep it simple, the 4040 does sound better. It has a more flat curve, and it gives you more flexibility with adjusting some of the mids and the lows. It doesn't drastically drop off on the low end like the 2020 does, and it gives you a little bit of nice crispiness on the high ends and gives you a little bit more brightness. Not to say that you can't make up for it with some EQ on the 2020, but out of the box, the 4040 does sound better. But I keep saying this, for $200 more, it better. It's gotta have something to make it worthwhile. So one other thing I want to test. Let's see how close we could get the 2020 to the 4040. I'm going to tweak some of the EQ on the 2020 right now and see how close we could get it, and see if you guys can notice a difference. We're going to start the test right now. So when I bought the 2020, I'm just going to do a little history just so you can get a feel for if you can notice the difference. When I got the 2020, my first one, I sold one of them because I didn't need to. I was going to buy this one, and I sold the other one to save up for this. And what's it called? I bought this to do Let's Plays. I had a Let's Play channel, and really was just playing video games for fun and making videos and learning how to edit. That was basically what it was. Nothing came of it. No one watched the videos, but it was fun. It was really fun to do, and it was a good hobby to have. It's nice to see now that that work is paid off and people are actually watching these videos, which is really cool. And when I got the 4040, to be honest, I don't know if I would make that purchase again. Nothing against the microphone. It's just I didn't really need it for anything. I like to buy stuff because I need it. All right, so that's a good test. Let's see if you notice the difference. In my opinion, it comes close. But when it comes to like listening to it with professional headphones and professional monitors, you notice the difference. If you were to put it through YouTube, you might not. So you better be using proper headphones or something like that to listen to this. Otherwise, you're not going to notice the difference anyway. And you'll be like, what am I wasting my time with this? Well, you need to use the proper equipment. If you're serious about using audio equipment, especially microphones, if you're doing research, use the proper equipment. Get the best set of headphones that you have. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars or even hundreds of dollars on headphones. You can find some nice pairs for about $100. Audio Technica makes a nice pair that I had for a while. They broke, but I got 3 good years out of them. So, hey, $100 for 3 years is pretty good. All right, so the moment you all been waiting for. Is it worth the upgrade from the 2020 to the 4040? Now, this does apply to people who are in possession of a 2020, but if you aren't and you are using something similar to a 2020, like a Rode Pod mic, or if you're using an SM57, SM48, one of those $100 dynamic microphones, or maybe a Blue Spark or something like that, you can also make that consideration as well. I would have to say yes. It is worth the upgrade from the $100 mark to the $300 mark. The 2020 is worth it. And as I said in my previous videos about the 2020 and about mics in general, the features and the quality are not vast enough to give you that extra bit. So the $50 extra that you would pay to a 2035 or whatever, to have some switches on the back that I said don't make a big difference even up to this one, they're not worth it in that sense. So get the 2020 if you're planning on that. But if you are in possession of a $100 microphone of this status, going up to the $300 one, if you're ready, what you're using it for will determine this, which is my next thing. If you're using this for streaming, stick with the AT2020 or your Rode Pod mic or your $100 microphone for as long as you can. And if you have some disposable income, saying you have $300, $400, you can upgrade to this one if you'd like to. With the pad and the roll-off and everything, you can use this as a good streaming mic. It sounds great. You notice the difference a little bit, but for the extra price, like I said, unless you have the extra cash to just blow on another microphone, I would stick with your 2020 or whatever you have. But if you are in a professional setting, if you're recording stuff, if you're trying to record music, vocals, and everything like that, go with the 4040, and it will give you a lot higher quality audio and definitely make it easier to edit because of that frequency response curve. Keep in mind that frequency response curve is there for a reason. It gives you more information of how the microphone is tuned and how it will hear things. And the flatter that curve is in the midsection, the better it's going to be, at least in my experience. Because you don't want any muddiness. Muddiness is really, really, bleh. It's disgusting. It doesn't sound great. It sounds like you're in a tunnel sometimes. One last thing that I want to talk about with these two microphones. The AT4040 does come with a nice case. It does come with a shock mount. The 2020 just comes with a mount, not a shock mount. So you're going to have to get that a little bit extra. Just a little side note there. No big deal, but it's a nice touch on the 4040, so you get a little extra stuff. Just want to throw that in there before I finish up here. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you found this video helpful, enjoyable, or anything whatsoever, please leave a like down below and consider subscribing for more videos that are coming out in the future on these microphones. I'm probably going to do more on these microphones in the future and future microphones that I have and have done. I got a lot of other things coming up that involve microphones that I've touched on before. Also, if you have any questions, comments, or anything whatsoever, please leave it down in the comments section down below. I'll be happy to answer any questions on gear, technical stuff, whatever it may be. I'll do my best to answer as best as possible. And yeah. So until next time, be safe, be kind. If you would go out, please wear a mask. It's really something we need to do nowadays. I know it sucks, but just the way it is. And yeah, I'll see you next time. All right, ladies.
We better keep moving.
Wet t-shirt contest. I'll be the judge. Jeff is gonna just sit there and bleed out.
Let me see.